Congressman Steny Hoyer from Maryland. He is the House Democratic whip, a powerful man in Washington and in Congress. Like all of us this morning, Congressman, you woke up to these pictures from Yemen. Yet another U.S. embassy in the Middle East being stormed, the walls breached by protesters there. What did you make of these protests this morning, and have you heard anything about how they started?
Well, I have not yet been briefed fully, but I think all of us are dramatically reminded of the violent nature of the societies that are contending to establish democracy or to establish autocratic leaderships in their countries. We know that there are some very violent elements. We've been the subject of attack from those elements. We are reminded of the danger that our men and women who are sent abroad to represent the United States of America to promote democracy and freedom around the world. We know the danger to which they're exposed. The tragic death of Ambassador Stevens, Sean Smith, and others in Libya point out how dangerous the daily lives are in these areas of the world. We express our deep sympathy, but I'm sure that every embassy in the world has been put on high alert, particularly in areas where we know there are violent proclivities, but also around the world to make sure that our embassy personnel are on guard, Americans are on guard, and that we keep our people safe.
Congressman, we all express our sympathies. I think all Americans do around the country to the loss of life in Libya overnight. But politics has become a big part of this discussion over the last 24 hours. Democrats have been extremely critical of how Mitt Romney has handled the situation, but he hasn't been the only one talking about politics. I want to play you a clip of an interview that President Obama did with CBS last night talking about Governor Romney and the politics of this.
There's a broader lesson to be learned here, and Governor Romney seems to have a tendency to shoot first, name later. And as president, one of the things I've learned is you can't do that. It's important for you to make sure that the statements that you make are backed up by the facts and that you've thought through the ramifications before you make them.
This was a little bit striking to me, sir. Mitt Romney did receive criticism for, quote-unquote, politicizing the events that were happening in the Middle East, yet President Obama seeks out this interview with CBS to make the statement about Governor Romney. Isn't he just as guilty of politicizing the events in the Middle East?
Not at all. You're asking me the question, and the questions arose because, in my opinion, Mitt Romney, from a political perspective, made some reckless statements without the facts. And as a result, reporters started asking questions about that, to which President Obama and myself just now and others are responding to. I thought Condoleezza Rice's response, who was the foreign policy spokesperson at their convention, was the proper response. She expressed deep sympathy, and she expressed a view that we needed to keep our personnel safe, and we ought to remember our personnel who are abroad. She didn't get into politics. She didn't get into criticism. We all need to know the facts of what happened here. It is clear, however, that Mr. Romney responded not to a statement of the administration, not a statement of policy, but of a statement made at the embassy in Benghazi in an attempt to quiet trouble. It is ironic that Mr. Romney, who in his response at the convention to his nomination said that one of the first things he was going to do is the defense of religion, to make sure that our First Amendment and respect for all religions was paid attention to and was honored. Frankly, it would seem that the statement of the personnel at the embassy in trying to quiet was expressing that very American principle that Mr. Romney said was so important. So I think the president's response was measured, very frankly, last night. But I think that this is a time for Americans to come together, to understand that our personnel arrayed abroad are in harm's way, but that they are presenting our values, and they are trying to stabilize some very unstable areas of the world for the benefit of this country, its safety, and for the benefit of the entire world.
Congressman, I just want to move away from politics and sort of more to your point about just where we stand today. And just as an American looking at these pictures playing out in the streets, I'm left wondering at what point this will all stop. In addition to that, talking to the international editor here of Time magazine, who was describing sort of this post-Arab Spring era, this new genre of the Middle East, if you will. And we just talked to John McCain, so let me just read you something that the senator said to us in asking about the situation in Libya. He said, we need to train their police and military. Again, it's not expenditure of American tax dollars. It's providing the kind of assistance that any country that is forming up after being the subject of a brutal dictatorship for so many years. So Congressman, where do we as a nation going forward, how do we help in doing that? And then how much, though, does Libya really need to step up and push these radical groups out?
Well, I think that I agree with John McCain. I think he's absolutely right. It is not a time to retreat or to turn and run. It is a time, and America, of course, has no intention of doing that. America, in a bipartisan way, has been very resolute in confronting those who would terrorize our people, but terrorize their own countries as well. The Libyans have apologized. The Libyans' leadership has said it's going to make greater efforts, and we need to give assistance to those efforts to keep their country stable and secure. Obviously, no country, and I emphasize no country, has been free of not having terrorist acts perpetrated in its own country. But clearly, we need to ensure that the Libyans, other host governments, do everything they can to keep our personnel secure, as it is our obligation to keep their personnel secure here in the United States.
All right, Congressman Steny Hoyer, the House Democratic Whip, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, Jim Frederick, we've been reading